Hello and thanks for tuning in to the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent McCory from the Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks. I'm Vincent McCory at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Joke Rogers in Lagos brings you that story.
The Plateau State government in north-central Nigeria has kicked off a monthly environmental sanitation exercise to promote a clean and healthy environment to prevent the spread of infectious diseases. Speaking at the flag-off of the exercise at the Federal Secretariat in Jos, the state capital, Governor Caleb Mutfwang says the cleanup will be observed on the last Saturday of every month and will be replicated across the 17 local government areas of the state.
One of the promises of the newly elected governor of Plateau State is the revival of the monthly environmental sanitation exercise in the state. The state governor is making good his promise and has embarked on a sensitization campaign to educate residents on the importance of maintaining a clean and healthy environment. The state governor, in the company of his wife, the deputy governor and top government officials, visit the Jos Bukuru metropolis to take part in the cleanup exercise. Although not many residents took part in this month's sanitation exercise, the governor is optimistic that more residents will key into subsequent exercises.
It's a good takeoff, even though we found in many places that people didn't comply with government instructions to observe the hours of 7 to 10 as the period for environmental sanitation. But there was substantial compliance, and we are pleased to see that people are looking forward to cooperating with government and ensuring that the environment is kept clean.
The new Plateau State government appears resolved to ensure that the monthly environmental sanitation exercise does not fail, and it is appealing to residents to partake in the cleanup to ensure a clean and healthy environment.
I'm now being joined on the program by the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Plateau State, Albert Chaimang from Jos. Thank you so much for joining us today on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
So the Plateau State government has kicked off a monthly environmental sanitation exercise to promote a clean and healthy environment, especially to stop the spread of infectious diseases. What did the new government see that, necessitated this action?
Actually, when the new government came in at the inauguration of His Excellency Barrister Caleb Mutfwang, he mentioned the state of emergency on the environment, and recently he relaunched a sanitation day. In the past, we usually observe such sanitation days, but in the recent past, the frequency reduced, and I think people are forgotten that we need to keep our environment clean. Perhaps that is why the governor said we should observe a day of sanitation each month so that people will be reminded, and will also encourage the general citizenry to actively participate in keeping the environment clean.
Right, and this encouragement that you speak about in inaugurating, the new environmental policy, is there going to be a task force in place to ensure that people get to it and do participate in the monthly, environmental sanitation?
The task force is working to clear up now, but for the sanitation days, it will be routine in the sense that government officials will go out with mobile courts to enforce the observation of the sanitation, and we'll go around to also inspect premises that are not complying, so that people will be there and then will be fined or whatever, depending on what the mobile court says.
Right. How much of a restriction of movement will there be in Plateau State? Or is this going to be across the state, or is it just going to be in the state capital, Jos? And is there going to be restriction of movement? Perhaps I want to also say, is there going to be collaboration with neighboring states to ensure that, people do not cross over when they're supposed to stay within Plateau State to be cleaning up their communities?
It's a statewide program, and the restriction of movement will be for 3 hours, 7 to 10 a.m., last Saturday of the month. Come to think of it, I think we will inform neighboring states, most especially because Plateau State happens to be in the corridor of people traveling from north to south and south to north. We'll inform neighboring states that, yes, on these days, the Plateau State will be observing a sanitation day, and there will be restriction of movement for the first 3 hours of the morning, 7 to 10 a.m., and that will be like an advisory, so that people will be aware of that, and they will now schedule their movements around these 3 hours of restriction.
And then, you have said that there was environmental sanitation before in Plateau State. It's just that perhaps people got a bit laid back and lackluster about it. So is there going to be a reorientation program for the people before the eventual kickoff to say, you know what, you need to make your environment cleaner. It's not safe and it's not healthy to live in this manner?
Our environmental health officers are already in the field, having direct contact with most especially stakeholders within communities, so that we are reawakening that concern for living healthy in a healthy environment. So we are interfacing with them, telling them what we have observed and how of recent people tend to take their waste from their homes to public places instead of having a common place within the community where our environmental sanitation agency will come and pick from.
Right. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Plateau State, Albert Chaimang, thank you so much for your time today on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. After the break, rising murder rates in South Africa. With over 6,000 homicides in the first 3 months of this year, citizens call for effective policing. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. South Africa's persistently high number of homicides has come under the spotlight. In the first 3 months of this year, more than 6,000 people were slain in the country, according to official statistics. And fed up citizens are calling for effective policing. Vicky Stark reports from Cape Town, South Africa.
In the Tafelzug neighborhood in Cape Town's Mitchell's Plain urban area, Feroz Kelly is fighting to protect her grandchildren from warring gangsters. She's already lost one. In 2019, 10-year-old Aisha Kelly was killed by a stray bullet during a gunfight between alleged gangsters. Feroz Kelly explains that Aisha was walking to a nearby shop with her mom.
Aisha went around the corner and we heard the shot just go bah. And then it's like, yo, what happened now? And somebody came around the corner, jumping so high from the ground to call, Aisha's laying here, Aisha.
Kelly says a few days after her granddaughter was buried, South African Minister of Police PoliticsToday visited and they discussed the 3 suspects who'd been apprehended. but she says she's still waiting for justice.
He made a lot of promises to me and my daughter. He said the case is going to be finished in less than a year, and it's almost 3 years down the drain.
Member of Parliament Oka Terblanche serves on the Portfolio Committee on Police. Terblanche compared South Africa's homicide figure to the number of civilians killed in Ukraine, which the UN estimates to be about 9,000 since Russia invaded in February 2022. Terblanche says the latest homicide statistics compiled by the police show 6,000 people were slain in the first 3 months of this year. And he says in the 12 months from April 2021 to March 2022, the number of homicides in South Africa was roughly 25,000.
Only 14% of all murders that got reported to the police. The police succeed to investigate properly. The detective rate is only 14%.
Only 14% of reported murders were solved by police last year. In reply to questions from VOA, Police Ministry spokesperson Lorenzo Temba wrote that the ministry is spearheading a detective academy to bolster investigation capabilities, and it's also looking beyond South Africa's shores for assistance in this matter. When announcing the latest crime statistics in May, Cele said that police visibility would improve and more technology would be employed.
The SAPS is also purchasing unmanned aerial vehicles or so-called drones to better police from the sky. More drone pilots are also being licensed, and drone pilots' interns are being recruited. Body-worn cameras as well as shot spotters in high-density crimes areas are being prioritized.
Meanwhile, at the University of Cape Town, third-year social work student Zukile Ntentema is setting up a youth violence prevention center. He aims to provide data analysis to help anti-crime organizations measure success.
Of course, we want to help some of these grassroots organizations with proposal writing and other aspect of academic aspect. But most importantly, we will also be boots on the ground.
There is a shortage of social workers in South Africa, home to over 60 million people, and many of its social ills are rooted in poverty. Ntentema says everyone must work together to combat the high homicide statistics so that the country's future generations not only survive, but also prosper. Vicky Stark for VOA News, Cape Town, South Africa.
The third China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo in central China's Hunan province has been concluded with the $10.3 billion worth of projects signed. The expo, which held in Changsha City, themed Common Development for a Shared Future, aimed to boost business links between the two sides while welcoming more made-in-Africa products into the Chinese market.
The China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo attracted over 100,000 visitors, including 1,700 foreign visitors and 900 on-site buyers and professional visitors. According to the statistics from the Expo's organizing committee, the four-day event saw a record high in the Expo's 5-year history. A total of 120 projects with a value of $10.3 billion was signed at the event. Additionally, 11 African countries announced 74 cooperative projects, the largest number in the Expo's history.
The economic and trade cooperation between China and Africa has been expanding from traditional trade and engineering construction to digital, green and financial fields. In particular, the import of agricultural products from Africa shows great cooperation potential.
Visitors from Africa said that the Chinese market has much to offer their businesses and populations. Meanwhile, several business leaders from across the African continent discussed the factors driving economic and trade growth between China and Africa. Andrew Gatara, founder and managing director of tourism company G-Step Group, asserted that the gathering is a chance to advance cooperation on both sides.
The feeling is that this is a very huge market. And having this expo between Africa and China being held in this city, it brings so many advantages, not only to the local people of Changsha here, but also the people of Africa. This is a very big platform. The feeling is positive. This is a big chance for cooperation on both sides.
John Nkandu, Executive Director of NewCaf Uganda, one of the country's primary coffee exporters, pointed to demographic factors that he said are crucial to accelerating trade growth.
I think number one, driver are the younger people.
Younger people?
The younger people, because they bring about, real consumption. We are also looking at population. The population of Africa is growing.
Yeah.
Okay, in the same way, of course, historically, China has been ahead of the game in terms of population growth, and that in itself means increased consumption, and therefore meaning increased trade.
China is Africa's largest trading partner, and official data show that bilateral trade between China and Africa totaled $282 billion in 2022. In the first 4 months of this year, China's new direct investment in Africa totaled $1.38 billion, up 24% year-on-year.
6% of all maternal deaths around the world are caused by obstructed labor, according to the World Health Organization. And that's when a baby can't move through the birth canal. It can also lead to obstetric fistula, a condition that can have a long-term impact on a woman's health, especially in developing countries. Reporter Edie Uweso has more from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, in this report narrated by Omari Kaseko.
Christina James, a resident of Kahama in the Shinyanga region of northwestern Tanzania, traveled for more than 900 kilometers to CCBRT Hospital in Dar es Salaam in search of fistula treatment. Obstetric fistula, caused by prolonged and obstructed childbirth labor, has a devastating impact on women. The injury, which causes a person to lose control over bladder and bowel movements, can lead to further complications if not treated. James says she struggled with fistula for more than 2 years before she received surgical treatment.
I delivered the baby naturally and I was supposed to get stitches at the hospital, but after getting the stitches, they ripped off. I was sent to the hospital, but I already had a fungus infection.
Despite seeking help, James says her medical woes did not end until this year when she arrived at CCBRT Hospital.
I'm asking for anyone who has a child to look at them carefully and send them to the hospital when she feels pain. We shouldn't leave to people who don't know. They cause us a lot of problems.
The memories of her healing journey, she says, are painful. She was socially isolated and laughed at, and found herself unable to work because of the shame associated with her injury. She wants to change this situation for others. Doctors in the country also want to encourage women to understand the condition and seek help. Daniel Michael, a surgeon at a hospital where James is getting treatment, says the community also needs to support women.
We are asking if we can help these women in a timely manner because the biggest problem of fistula occurs during labor pain. These patients are ignored, so we are asking at the hospital level, patients shouldn't be in a long extended period of time of labor pain. And if the hospital can't help them on time, they should refer them as quickly as possible.
Every year, according to World Health Organization, between 50 and 100,000 women are affected by obstetric fistula, which can be treated usually through surgery. For Edie Uweso in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Omari Kaseko, VOA News.
As Pakistan spiraled into a crisis this year, Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Tea Development Agency, Wilson Matora, pressed his government to put Kenya's KTDA cooperative tea on a list of essentials that would grant importers access to precious US dollars. His urgent lobbying reflects anxiety about a scarcity of dollars, the lifeblood of global trade, across emerging market and developing economies that is impeding commerce and piling pressure on local currencies and sovereign debtors.
The World Bank estimates that 1 in 4 MDs have effectively lost access to international bond markets, a key source of hard currency needed to pay for oil and commodities like food. Without dollars from KTDA's customers in Pakistan, its biggest market, the co-op that produces 60% of Kenya's tea, would have struggled to pay its own bills.
50% of our tea goes to Pakistan market. So it meant that the uptake of our tea was low, and therefore there was firing of stocks. However, we quickly had to intervene through other means, and we went into ROCs with those buyers from Pakistan. But then quickly again, we made a delegation there with the government, the CS himself, and the Pakistan government classified tea now as an essential commodity. And therefore that's now our system since then. So we no longer have that challenge now with the Pakistan market. We had a similar problem in Egypt, but it has also eased. But the effect, of course, was the same. The uptake of our tea was low.
His efforts in Islamabad paid off, but KTDA is seeing similar strains emerging in Egypt, its second biggest market, where 3 steep currency devaluations have raised worries about Cairo's ability to service dollar debt. The spike in global interest rates has already tipped Sri Lanka and Ghana into defaulting. Tunisia is teetering. Nigeria could soon be spending half or more of government revenues on interest payments. Even Kenya itself is seen at risk. Although the dollar's share as a global reserve currency has dropped to 59% from 70% over a decade, it continues to dominate global trade. Some countries are trying to break or circumvent the dollar's stranglehold.
With the experiences we have of a dollar shortage, that's the direction now our African countries should get into, where they can trade with their own currencies. So for us, if that is embraced, the way South Africa, they don't deal with the dollar, they deal with the rand. That becomes better for all of us because it makes our business is of bigger businesses. So we're looking forward to that being actualized by African countries.
In Africa, where the tough conditions attached to IMF loans have made some countries weary of relying on the fund, politicians, including Kenya's President William Ruto, have also argued for a trade payment system using local currencies.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is looking at how artificial intelligence can be used to help identify goods made with child and forced labor and prevent those goods from entering the country. VOA's Julie Tabor has more.
Each year, millions of people worldwide are forced to work in abusive labor conditions. That includes 160 million children between the ages of 5 and 17, according to the latest numbers from the International Labor Organization and UNICEF. To address this growing concern, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas has a new task force to explore ways artificial intelligence might help detect and prevent goods made from forced labor from entering the country.
We will seek to deploy AI to more ably screen cargo, identify the importation of goods produced with forced labor, and manage risk.
Tackling the problem at its source would be a big help, says Thea Lee, U.S. Department of Labor Deputy Undersecretary for International Affairs.
Well, I think artificial intelligence is an extremely powerful and potent tool of trying to explore how we might be able to marshal data that is out there. And so, for example, looking at cobalt that might be mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where does that end up being transformed into lithium-ion batteries in China and then put into electric vehicle batteries that we would find in cars in the United States?
Artificial intelligence can also be used at the border to detect counterfeit goods made from forced labor or child labor.
Our largest port of entry that gets in that type of commodity is LA Long Beach, and they get in millions of containers a year of all kinds of commodities. AI can play a very, very big role in that just by connecting the dots, where it came from, where it's going, and by using these advanced algorithms, they can put together the puzzle faster than a human could ever do it.
While AI may be helpful, experts warn it's not yet foolproof and needs to be deployed with caution.
I do know it has to learn the environment. And when you're trying to learn an environment such as China and knowing how difficult it is getting accurate information out of China, what is going to prevent false positives from happening, and who's going to validate that the information that's being learned by this artificial intelligence is in fact accurate.
What is needed in addition to technology is the will, says Thea Lee.
We need governments and companies being willing to take the steps to put in place laws and enforce them and regulate them.
The AI task force is due to report its findings to Homeland Security in the coming months. Julie Tabo, VOA News.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. To remember that channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Joker Rogers. Thanks for watching and goodbye.